My name is Shani Womack, and I am a professional storyteller. Or as I like to say, since it's Black History Month, I'm a griot. Does anybody know what a griot is? A griot is a storyteller, but also a keeper of the history. In Africa, a long, long time ago, every community, every village had a griot. And that person was an oral storyteller. That means that was before they would write things down, before there were books that were printed and bound together. There was a griot who would keep a record of all the births, right? All the deaths. They would remember all the significant events that had happened to the people. And it was their job to pass that information on from one generation to the next so that the people would not forget who they were. And they would not forget all the significant events that had happened to help to make them stronger, right? And how they had survived through, could be natural disasters or invasion by another tribe or something, but the griot would remember all those stories and pass them on. So that is what I do, right? I'm a present day griot. I was just telling Mr. Porter that this is something I've been passionate about for a long time. I've been telling stories here and there for about 15 years. I worked as a school counselor, and I worked in Flint schools, Carmen Ainsworth, for the GISD. I worked with Early Head Start and all different programs throughout Genesee County, working with families and working with students and children. And a part of what I did was I would hear people's stories. Right, as a mental health counselor, students would come to me, they were struggling with the issue maybe going on at home. And what would I do? I'd listen to their story, right? Listen to their story and help them to find solutions. If two students were bumping heads, they were arguing, they had been fighting, they couldn't find a way to get along, I would listen to each of their stories and try to come up with a compromise. Right, so I've always been a good listener, and I think being a good listener helps you to be a good storyteller. So today, I was invited to come here into this sacred space. I think the classroom is a sacred space because it's a place where learning takes place, right? And learning is magical. Learning has the power to change you, and not only you, learning can change your community and change your world. So today we're going to be taking part of some sacred opportunities to begin to be changed, to be transformed, to begin to see ourselves as we really are. Because oftentimes I think that we don't often see ourselves as we really are. We might take on some of the things that society or other people in our neighborhood or things people have said about us, and we begin to believe that that's who we are. But today we're going to start to take all of that off, and we're going to begin to discover who we are. The name of this program is Family Treasures. Now, I heard that there had been a little bit of difficulty in people being able to maybe wrap their heads around the concept that their family has some treasures, right? So when I talk about family treasures, I'm not talking about, your family has, gold in a pot somewhere or that they have fine china sitting somewhere, or that you may have an inheritance of $1 million waiting on you. That's not the type of treasure I'm talking about. I'm talking about little, ordinary, everyday things that we might miss if we don't take the time to really look and realize the value in the ordinary, in the everyday things and the people that are around us. So that's what we're going to be doing over the next few days, is trying to unpack and discover what treasures we have in our families and what treasures are in us, and then how that affects the broader community and the world. So is that okay with you guys if we just dive in and get started with that? All right, so we have some goals for our programming, some things we hope to accomplish in the next few days. And, it might be ambitious, but I'm a ambitious kind of person, all right? I like to always think positive and I like to dream big. And so some of the things that we're hoping that will be accomplished over the next few days is that you would be able to identify a family member who had a great impact on you, or it could be a close friend, could be a neighbor, someone, a teacher even, who had a great impact on you and helped to shape your character. The next thing we want to do is identify at least one artifact or heirloom that belonged to that person. The next thing is we want to write down and develop a story about that person and the artifact or the heirloom, the treasure that we have acquired. We want to write a story about that. And the final thing is we're going to prepare that story to be recorded for inclusion in a national writing project that's taking place. So the Family Treasures Program is one small part of a larger project that's going on. I believe it's called Voices, right? Voices. So, and that's what we really want to encourage you to do, is to use your voice and understand that there's value in your experiences. So this morning, I'm going to share a story with you. This is an example of the type of story that I'm hoping you all can create. Each story is unique. Each person has their own way of telling their story, so you don't have to tell it just like I've told it. You can add your own flair, your own flavor to the story. But I'm hoping that the stories will end up being between 2 and 5 minutes when they're recorded. Like I said, we're going to help you with every part of the process. The main thing that you have to do is come up with a artifact, right? Something that you can say is a family treasure, a family heirloom, okay? So I'm going to start with my grandmother's apron. That's the name of my story. All right. My grandmother's apron is old and worn. The fabric is thin and the pocket is torn. The colors are faded, but her memory is still vivid in my mind. I could never forget that Jamaican grandmother of mine. You see, I had a Jamaican grandmother. At least that's what I was told. But I never met the woman until I was 10 years old. That's when she came into my life like a breath of fresh air. My grandmother was magical. I loved everything about her. I loved the way she walked, the way she talked, the way she dressed, how she smelled. I loved the stories that she shared and the foods that she prepared. My grandmother was magical. I've never met anyone like her. She was fearless. She was bold. She moved to a whole new country after she turned 50 years old. My grandmother was magical. She loved to cook, and that's one of my favorite things about her, because so did I. I loved to cook as well, and I would watch her in the kitchen, and she would use just ordinary spoons and coffee cups to measure with. She never used a cookbook or a recipe. And I say, Grandma, how do you do it? How do you know what to put in there? She said, child, it's all in ear and it's in ear. Me been doing this for a long time, since me was a youth. I'm probably about your age. My grandmother spoke patois, so that's how she would talk to me. And I remember sitting at her knee, learning how to interpret patois, because there was a bit of a language barrier. I didn't always understand what she was saying, but I learned, and she was patient enough with me to teach me. And she would allow me, she would invite me into the kitchen, up to the counter and up to the stove. And she would take her apron off and she'd wrap it around me. And because I was little, I was 10, but I was still kind of short, she tied it up high around my chest and let me work with her in the kitchen. And I would watch her as she made all kinds of Jamaican delicacies. She would boil dumplings and green bananas. Things I had never tried. She'd make ackee and saltfish. And then I remember watching her make big pots of bubbling, boiling Fragrant curry chicken with coconut rice and peas. Sometimes she'd make curry goat as well. I remember one year she had the honor of making Jamaicans' most favorite and prized dishes. She got the honor of making manish water for the annual Jamaican picnic. And I tell you, people came from far and wide, from Detroit, from Pontiac, from Saginaw. They came from all over just to get a cup of her manish water soup. Oh, they raved about it. It was wonderful. My grandmother loved to cook, and she cooked with great love. She also loved to give food as a gift. Every year she would save her money up and she would send it to our relatives in New Jersey. They in turn would send us back a nice, beautiful, fragrant black cake for Christmas. Now this was a special treat that I always looked forward to because black cake is very unique. I don't know if you've ever had anything like it. The closest thing I can think of is maybe a fruit cake, but it's much better than that. You see, black cake is a thick, dense, rich, buttery cake. It looks like chocolate, but it's not. It's a wine and rum-soaked fruit cake. It's fragrant, it's boozy, it's fruity, and I think it's a little bit naughty. As a child, I was not allowed to drink, but every year my grandmother would insist that they let me have just a little piece of this black cake. She said, "Give the child a lick of cake. Give her a lick of cake." And my parents would comply. They'd give me a piece of that black cake, and oh, it was wonderful and rich. And I thought, maybe this is even illegal, right? But it made me feel grown up and mature. And my grandmother had that special way about her, about knowing how to make you feel special. You see, I had a Jamaican grandmother, and she was magical. Maybe that's why I hold on to this old raggedy apron, because it keeps her memories close to my heart. I had a Jamaican grandmother who was magical, and one day I hope to be a magical grandmother too. The end. So now you know a little bit more about me. You know about my family, right? My grandmother in particular. And you know about this radio apron, right? That I carry around. Why is this a treasure? This is something I hold dear. Like when I talked about doing this story, I went home to find my apron. I couldn't find it. And I was like losing my mind. I'm like asking my husband, asking my kids, have you seen my apron? Right? I'm panicked because this is something that's important to me. Somebody else might see this and just be like, throw that junk out, right? But this is important to me. So a family treasure is something that is valuable to you. Nobody else may see the value in it, but you do, right? It holds some special memory, some connection for you, right? And helps you not only to remember that person, but in remembering my grandmother, it helps me remember who I am, right? If she was strong enough to move to a whole nother country at 50 years old, then hey, I can do some stuff, right? I can do some things. I can be daring. I can be fearless. I can be bold because she was. So that's the cool thing about the Family Treasures activity, because it allows you to see not only other people's strength, but find your own as well.